Hello dear students, welcome back. Our topic today is telling a story and my name is Ajlin. Today you will be listening to a story and telling your own story. For this lesson you need a pen or a pencil, a notebook, internet access, and you can stop the recording anytime you need. Our topic today are stories. But first of all, we are going to learn some idioms connected with stories. There is a cock and bull story, a hard luck story, a sob story, an inside story, old story, another story, tall story, bedtime story, likely story, cover story, fish story, and scare story. What you should do now is copy these stories or idioms with stories, stop the recording, and search the net for the meaning of these idioms. So now stop the recording and go to the internet and turn to Mr. Google for the meaning of these idioms. Write them down in your notebook and then we will check what you have written. Let's check now what you have found. A cock and bull story is an exaggerated story. Hard luck story, it is a typically self-pitying story. A sob story is a sad story that you tell in an attempt to get sympathy from others. An inside story is when you have some privileged information. Same old story, that's when you say when something happens over and over again. Another story, well, that's an entirely different story in scope or description from the person or thing that was just being discussed. A tall story is a story that is very difficult to believe. A bedtime story is something similar, a lie or a made-up story. A likely story is a hard-to-believe story. A cover story is a story that one tells as an alibi. A fish story is a big lie. A scare story is a story that makes something seem more serious than it actually is. Let us now practice. What you have to do is copy this link, and in Learning Apps there is an interesting exercise where you can practice these idioms with the word story. So stop the recording and go to Learning Apps. Now that we have learned the different idioms with the word story, it is the time to learn different types of stories. So we can have fairy tales, fables, we can have love stories, science fiction stories, horror stories, and thrillers. I'm pretty much sure that you know what thrillers are, horror stories, science fiction, or love stories. A fable is a story where animals have characteristics of human beings and they talk. And fairy tales, well, what a fairy tale is what we are going to learn today. Fairy tales are stories that follow certain rules. First of all, there is an opening and ending line. The opening line usually is once upon a time, and the ending line is they lived happily ever after. It is always set in the past, so we use past tenses, past continuous, past perfect when we retell a fairy tale. There is always a hero or a heroine and a villain. There is something magical in that story, a magician, a wizard, a magic potion, And magic numbers are very important. Number 3 and number 7 are considered to be magical numbers. It is a tall story, which means an exaggerated story. And it consists of 3 parts. First, there is a problem, then there is a climax, and then there is the resolution of that problem. A fairy tale teaches us a universal lesson. There is always a moral at the end that we have to bear in mind. And now is the story time. So we are going to listen and to watch to a fairy tale. But we are not going to do it in one piece, but we are going to stop every now and then to check your predictions. Okay? Ready? Relax, lean back in your chairs and listen to the story. Once upon a time, in a small country far, far away, there was a terrible thunderstorm. The wind was tearing the leaves from the trees, and the boughs of the trees were swaying to and fro. The lightning flashed, and a few moments later, a thunder could be heard. At that very same moment, another sound could be heard through the night, the sound of a newborn baby boy. The night was spooky, but what followed was even spookier. A prophecy was made that night by a strange man. He said that boy's quest in life would be to bring light to the world. The boy was very clever, and from his early age started showing true passion for books and was very much interested in mathematics, physics, and mechanics. Let us now predict a little bit. Who do you think the boy is? What is his quest? What comes next in the fairy tale? And which magical element would you introduce now? Please stop this recording and think about it for a moment. Then we shall see the second part of the fairy tale. One day, after spending hours and hours learning and experimenting in his shabby little lab, he was visited by a strange creature. He was not sure if he was dreaming or if she was real, if he should run away or stay and see what would happen. All of a sudden, the strange lady produced a shiny, sparkling magic ball. "Handle it with care," she said. He took it carefully in his shaky hands. "It would grant you 3 wishes," the lady said, as she was slowly fading until he could see her no more. Let us rethink a little bit more. What can the magic ball do? What do you think? Which magical numbers have been mentioned so far, and which numbers are yet to be mentioned? And what could those numbers be? Who could be the villain? And what could be the conflict about? Stop the recording again and think about the possible answers to these questions. Then we will watch the last part of the fairy tale. He took the magic ball and wished he could be in the land where dreams came true. He traveled for 7 days and 7 nights by sea and land. On the seventh day, he finally arrived in that strange new country. "This is the place where I will create the light and give it to the world," he said, and then he rubbed his magic ball for the second time. Little did he know that there was a very bad person who also wanted to have a light. Only he didn't want to give it to the world. He wanted to sell it. This is how the battle of the currents started. They fought day and night for life and death. You could hear swords clinking and clashing for days on end. So he rubbed the magic ball for the third time. He wished again for free energy in the whole world. Thunders and bolts started coming out. The magic ball trembled, shook, it jumped and broke apart. All of a sudden, there be light in the world. Electrical energy was produced, and it could now travel far distances and reach all corners of the universe. Unfortunately, it was not free, but he did live happily ever after, for he knew that he had brought a light to the world. Now that you have listened to the whole story, maybe you can guess who the villain is. What does the Battle of the Currents refer to? Because, this whole fairy tale was based on one scientist who actually lived. And there was really a battle of the currents. Could you guess the moral of the story? Let's stop now for a moment, stop this recording and think a little bit about it. So please pause the recording and try to find the answers to these questions. I hope you guessed well. This fairy tale was based on the life of our scientist Nikola Tesla. And what is the moral of the story? Well, the moral of the fairy tale is that no matter how hard your task may be, you always have to try hard to accomplish it. And in the end, you will succeed. It is now your turn to tell a story. What you have to do is make up a fairy tale, and you have to remember to use the opening and closing sentences that are typical for a fairy tale. You have to set it in the past and exaggerate as much as you can. You have to find a villain and make up a conflict. Don't forget to use some magic and magical numbers, and remember that good always wins, and that your story should teach us a universal lesson, that it should have some moral. Use tools such as Vocaru or Adobe Spark Video Maker to record your story. This rubric here is to help you check your progress. We have come to the end of the lesson. If you have searched the net for explanations, if you have completed the exercises in learning apps, listened to the story and expressed your predictions, and if you have invented and recorded your own fairy tale, you should tick the smiling smiley, like this. If you haven't done some of these things, you should go back to the part that you haven't done and do it again. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye, everybody.